Welcome to SHiFT YRC Podcast, a podcast developed by young and early career researchers of the SHiFT Coast Action. For more information about SHiFT, take a look at the details in the channel description. I'm Sylvia, and today I'm here with Barbara. In each episode, we sit down with a special guest from our SHiFT community to uncover their journey, challenges, and insights that are shaping the world of research. Today, we're thrilled to welcome Andreia Sousa. Andreia, it's such a pleasure to have you here. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me.
So let's start from the beginning of your journey. Can you tell us a bit about your academic background and your career journey so far, and maybe the moment or experience that sparked your interest in your specialization?
So I'm a marine biologist. I began my research career looking into ecological questions. So I was interested in knowing more specifically about cetacean species, which are whales and dolphin species. And I wanted to understand their lives a little bit better. So what are their main preys, their preferred areas to feed, the number of animals, for example. So initially when I began, it was very much focused on these more ecological questions. And then I also worked quite a lot on the topic of climate change and climate impact assessment. So I was trying to develop methods, ways of understanding what could be the impacts of climate change on these species. And then I also worked in the development of climate adaptation strategies. So how can we then use this knowledge of what will be the impacts on species and larger socioeconomic systems of climate change, and how could we collectively identify measures to address the impacts of climate change? And of course, a lot of this work involved participatory methodologies and engagement with different stakeholders from not only from academia, but from governmental institutions, the private sector, local communities. And during this process, I was always also very interested in science communication because it involves a lot of communication of science. And I used to do that in kind of a very, I would say, linear way, in the sense that I would provide this information rather than co-creating it. And so the aspect of knowledge co-creation also was something that began to interest me, and that then led me to work at the intersection of arts and science, and how arts could contribute to engage people through a more emotional part of their of their understanding of climate change issues and of sustainability issues. And so in recent years, I've been really working at this intersection. And yes, and I guess some of the questions that interests me is how can we collaborate and work together from different disciplines, and how can we really co-produce knowledge with everyone involved and promote change.
Thank you for your introduction. It's always interesting to find out new way to approach the field of sustainability and climate change and transformation. So coming deeper into the research challenges that you can face in this field, what do you consider to be some of the biggest challenges in sustainability, transformation, and climate resilience that young researchers should address?
Yes, so I think some of the challenges relate to funding and to this funding support that is so essential. I mean, I can talk specifically from my experience in Portugal, where I developed most of my research. And I think the precarious nature of research contracts is a big challenge for young researchers. The issue of not only the short-term contracts, but the actual precarious nature of these contracts. I think it's limiting, and it's something that if we address it, we can all have researchers living better, feeling safe, and of course that also then reflects into the research and the work that we do, which hopefully, and I think it does happen, then translates into an overall contribution to society. So I think those issues are quite relevant. Maybe something also I would add is, at least that this also comes from my experience after the PhD, after I finished the PhD, there was kind of a lack of guidance in terms of career guidance, in terms of what are actually the options that some doctoral researchers can have and can choose from. So I think there is really a lack of institutional support in that sense, because you might want to explore other areas. You might want to do so in academia, but you might also want to explore the private sector and work there, or the public sector. You might also want to know what are the funding opportunities that are available in these different domains. And so I think that's something that's really lacking, and it would be a great support system for young researchers. And finally, I think another challenge is also the connection and the networking that is so important, I think, for young researchers to have a space to share their research, but also learn from other people, to connect, to know a bit more about other research fields as well. And I think this is something that the SHiFT Cost Action has really done, and that is so essential, which is bringing people together, because there's so much that can come out of it when people, especially people from different fields, come together, and this exchange of ideas can really make, I think, great advancements in the areas that each researcher is working on.
I just defended my PhD thesis, so I totally see myself in this situation that you just. So you actually already answered some questions that we wanted to ask you, but I will ask you something similar. What other challenges did you face during your career, maybe after your postdoc? In academia as well as just in research, if you were in a research center, and is there a recent project or finding that you are especially proud of or enthusiastic about?
Yes, so maybe I'll jump into the enthusiastic project. Yes, so to provide a little bit of context, I work mainly with marine soundscapes. So this was a work that came originally when I was starting my career in this more ecological area, let's say, of marine biology. And so very briefly, marine soundscapes are sounds recorded in the ocean, and they can come from different sources. They can be biological, which essentially means that are sounds produced by species, such as whales and dolphin species, but also sounds that are produced by human activities, such as shipping or drilling. And so it's very interesting because these marine soundscapes can provide for us a way to understand the health status of an ecosystem, based on the species that are vocalizing, or we can find, for example, that some species were vocalizing during a certain period of time, for example, a few years, and then they're not anymore, so maybe they're not there. And then we can hear new species that are coming into the soundscape. And so maybe there's some movements, there's some changes in the ecosystems, and some of these changes that might be related to climate change that we can really see, or actually, I should say, hear. And so it's a very interesting tool. It's a very interesting way of getting this idea of this ecosystem. And so I was always very interested in sound, and in the sound specifically produced by whales and dolphin species. I always find it some sounds are very funny. Sometimes some sounds were just something out of this world, although they really do happen in this world. And that, together with, I think, also a big component of community engagement and science communication that I was very also passionate about doing, and bringing together the arts, kind of provided this landscape for projects that involved specifically that. So art, science, community engagement for ocean conservation. So this is kind of the arena that I'm currently in the last couple of years working on. And replying more directly to your question, one of the projects that we have developed, and we are now applying for funding, so hopefully it comes through at some point, works with the idea of bringing people closer to the ocean through experimentation and through feelings, so through using their senses, combining arts and science. And the idea is that if we gather this more emotional and experiential through our senses of the ocean, then we can connect to the ocean in a deeper way. We can understand these issues also in a more, I would say, deeper and fuller understanding. And hopefully that would then lead to change and to transformation. And so this project involves scientists from different areas of marine science. It also involves chefs. It involves artists and the local community. And the goal is through a series of co-creative workshops looking into different aspects of the ocean, such as that can be translated through smell, touch, sight, and also sound, and how they combined can really bring all of these feelings also to the table. Because in fact, as it happens in nature and in particular in the ocean, a lot of this phenomenon we can't see because everything is happening below the surface, and actually over 200 meters light does not penetrate. So sound is one of the big mediums for species to communicate and to survive.
It is indeed really interesting to know that there are these new paths of discovering how our ecosystem just work together, and they have an impact on each other. And the fact that you're working with different kinds of professionals as well leads us to the next question, which is more on the network you're working with. And in particular, we would like to focus on your experience in SHiFT. So how has working in an interdisciplinary environment like SHiFT CoastAction enhanced your research capabilities?
Yes, that's a great question. It has brought so much into my research because essentially it has given me the opportunity to connect with other people who are looking at issues from the same interdisciplinary lens or through the same interdisciplinary lens. And so it's really such an exchange of knowledge. I can give you an example. For example, last week we had a SHiFT CoastAction event in Dublin in Trinity College called Sounds for Sustainability. So when I saw it, I thought, wow, this is really something that I would really love to participate in. I was fortunate enough to be selected to participate. And this event focused on how different people used sound to approach sustainability issues. And so we had people with a background on music that were looking at doing experimentation, for example, in forests with communities, and having these moments to connect with nature, which is something that it's so needed. It's such a big challenge. Also, this disconnection that we have with nature, and so using sound to provide this connection, to provide people with this connection with nature. We had also people talking about or working in projects related to climate risk, where this researcher collected interviews of people who experience flooding, and then with these interviews created a choir where people could collectively talk about their experience, not actually talk, but sing about their experience, and then presenting them to the public. So it was an event that brought a lot of different disciplines. Also, peace building. There was there were people working with music to address the issues of peace and peace building. And so for me, it was just such a moment of so many different ideas. They came from social justice, come from ethnomusicology, they come from science as well, science in the sense of natural sciences. And this was so enriching. And so this was the first part of the event. And the second part of the event was called the Dance of the Carbon Cycles. And this was a project that was developed also between artists and scientists. And so we had a folk dance that would represent the carbon cycles. And there were musicians and also singers. And so this was a dance and a performance where it was also very interesting to know how these different people collaborated. So how does the scientists collaborated with the artists? How was that process? How can we translate into an artistic movement as well, choreography, these biological processes? And then we as participants were also able to participate in the actual dance and experience that. So it was a wonderful event, and hopefully the film, the event, the dance was recorded and will hopefully be available soon for everyone to see. So it has been really a great pleasure, and it has helped me to view my research and the world and the way I am in the world differently. And Cost Action has certainly contributed to that.
Are there other particular aspects of the shift cost action that you have found especially beneficial or that directly impacted the way you research or your career development?
Yes, I think it gave me a lot to reflect upon. It made me, it provided me with new connections. So when you're looking into or when you're hearing about other people's experience in areas that are so different from the areas I work in, that's immediately you start connecting things, you start having new ideas. It's such a creative boost, I think. And also, of course, the network. I mean, knowing other people and which is so important and for future collaborations and to exchange ideas and to build initiatives. So I think those are the two key things I would say that are very relevant.
And looking ahead, so both in this interdisciplinary network you're building, but also on your own research and on your own field, what career opportunities do you see emerging in the field of sustainability, transformation, and climate resilience?
Yeah, I think opportunities related to interdisciplinarity have been something that over the years has been more and more. I think I think it has grown. I think again this aspect of involving arts and arts-based methods as a tool is a really interesting aspect to engage people for change and transformation. And I think also involving stakeholders and policymakers, I should say, it's something that really interests me, and I think it's probably an area where there's still a lot of space to explore and to in the future and to do some more research on. So this art science policy nexus is something that's also very interesting to bring, I think, into a more policy making arena, which is an arena that's perhaps traditionally not so open to this more I would say maybe emotional side. And so it's interesting to maybe think about that and about what kind of methods, what kind of processes we can really develop together to bring, I think, a little bit more, I would say emotion, but not just emotion, to bring, because that's what arts does, isn't it? Is to bring a little bit more depth and nuance to the issues that we're working with. And I think policymaking is also very much in need of that, of course, because then those decisions are being made from this standpoint. And I think that's very relevant. And of course, also in the future, and this has been something in that has already been developing and occurring, and so it's very much in the discourse. But maybe it's worth highlighting that, of course, involving people, involving all the different kinds of knowledge. It's also something very important. All of these things happening at the same time, of course, but also considering the knowledge that comes from different sources and how can we co-create knowledge together, and so that there's not this idea that one knowledge is more valuable than the other. And maybe finally, I think bringing all of this, so the different people, the different stakeholders, knowledge, the arts-based methods into education as well, and interacting with education, because I think in education is a field that also potentially has a lot to also learn from these processes, to bring a bit more creativity into the learning process. And there are a lot of people, fortunately, working in these areas. And so I think especially creativity is really an interesting doorway for learning and for change.
For sure, stakeholders' engagement and the process of co-creation are really important for addressing sustainability issues and climate change. So, what advice would you give to the young researchers that are just starting their career in this field? How can they manage this different, of course, this different process?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if I can really give an advice, but I can give a suggestion or an invitation of something that I think worked for me. So maybe it's useful for other people. I think if you're able to lead with curiosity is such a powerful thing. As a young researcher, I was fortunate enough to have a lot of freedom during my PhD, and that enabled me to look into other areas and kind of broaden my lens of what I was doing. So I wasn't just focusing on the actual research questions that I had defined, which I, of course, was, but more than that, I was able to follow my curiosity and follow my interest. And I can give an example. So I've worked, as I mentioned, with marine soundscapes, and then as a hobby, I wanted to learn music. So when I went to the Azores, which is an archipelago in the Central North Atlantic Ocean, where I did my PhD, I went to the local music school there to try to find information and a way to start some classes. And now it might sound obvious, but at the time it really wasn't for me, the connection of the two things. So I was recording these sounds of cetacean species, and that was kind of my job. And then I was doing something as my hobby. And so I think that now I can see much clearly how this curiosity then crossed and now found a way into this new area for me, which is really a new area of research. And so I think you can learn so much by following your curiosity and kind of connecting the dots, things that are not immediately so clear, but that in the end will really bring a lot to your research.
Thank you. That is actually a really good advice, because it's not that obvious to put your self-interest, your own curiosity into what you're doing, because it's about creating a passion out of your job and your research, and it's not always so obvious to do that. So that's a really great advice. And getting to the end, this is our last question. What do you think is the role of both young and senior researchers in shaping policy and practice in sustainability transformation and climate resilience? Because we spoke about stakeholders and policymakers, but how do you think these new and older, let's say, generations of researchers can work together for that?
Well, I think the good thing about, well, not only research, but I guess people in general, is that we all have different experiences, we all have different backgrounds. And so this collective knowledge is something that is so valuable. And, senior researchers have a much more in-depth knowledge of power structures, of the status quo, or of how things are organized and how things function. And so they have that experience. And maybe young research have a more I would say maybe a less conditioned view, and a new look on things, because they are starting to learn, and so have kind of a fresh eye, let's say, a fresh perspective. And so, of course, the real gain is when young researchers and senior researchers work together. And I think for that, maybe some ingredients are necessary. I think a certain open-mindedness on both parts is really necessary, and a kind of elimination of a hierarchical structure is also, I think, beneficial, because we can really learn from each other, and I think together, and really support each other. There are also aspects of caring in terms of this research community that are so important. And again, is this different perspectives and different knowledge and can come together. And I think then that's a stronger united front, if you'd like, to address the issues of sustainability, which are so challenging. They're very interesting, but they're very challenging. And so I feel that if young and senior researchers work together and speak at one voice, let's say, I think that's a really strong partnership to address these issues.
So thank you so much, Andreia, for your inspirational talk. Really, I enjoyed it a lot. The work that you do is, I think it's really poetic. I do think so. So you want to add something else? Maybe you have some final remarks for us?
I just really want to thank you both so much. It has been a pleasure to talk to you, and thank you for this work that you're doing of amplifying the voices of researchers that work in so many different fields, and sharing also the struggles that we all face, and many are similar, but also the inspiration. I think it's a very inspirational podcast. So thank you both very much.
Thanks a lot. So I think that this brings us to the end of this episode. Again, a big thank you to Andreia Sousa for sharing with us your experiences and for inspiring us, really. And also thank you to all our listeners for tuning in into the SHiFT YRC podcast. We really hope you are leaving with new insights, with inspiration, and maybe also with a spark for your next project. So if you enjoyed this episode, don't forget, please, to subscribe and share it with your network. And please keep an eye out for more episodes. So stay curious, stay connected, and we'll see you next time. Bye. Thank you, everyone.